Chapter 1. John was born in Vietnam in the early 1970s during a time of turmoil. His mother, a strong and resilient woman, raised him alone despite facing numerous hardships. When the Vietnam War ended in 1975, conditions worsened, and she knew staying meant a life of poverty. Dreaming of a better future for John, she made a brave decision to join a U.S.-supported resettlement program. At only 3 years old, John didn't understand what was happening. Clinging to his mother, he felt the chaos around him. In the turmoil, they became separated, and John found himself frightened as someone guided him onto a boat bound for America. As the boat departed, he was too young to grasp that he was leaving his mother and his homeland behind. In America, John arrived at a refugee camp, feeling lost and alone. He no longer remembered his Vietnamese name. Life in the camp was strange, but a compassionate volunteer noticed him sitting by himself. She and her husband were there to adopt a child, and John's solemn expression tugged at their hearts. Kneeling beside him, the woman asked gently, "Would you like to come home with us?" Though he didn't understand her words, her warm smile made him feel safe. They adopted him and named him John. Surrounded by love and care, John thrived, yet he often thought about his birth mother. One evening he asked his adoptive mother, "Do you think my birth mother thinks about me?" She hugged him and replied, "I believe she loves you as much as we do. Someday, if you want, we'll help you find her." Chapter 2. John's adoptive parents recognized his need to understand his origins. They supported him as he worked hard to succeed, honoring both his families. Eventually, he built a stable life, marrying a kind woman, and together they had 2 children. His adoptive parents embraced his wife and kids, and John felt fortunate to be surrounded by so much love. Yet, a part of him remained unfulfilled. He wondered if his birth mother was still alive and if she remembered him. With his wife and adoptive parents behind him, he decided to search for her. He posted on online forums, joined Vietnamese adoptee groups, and reached out to friends in the Vietnamese community, hoping to find any leads. Months passed with little progress, and his hope began to fade, but he refused to give up. One day, a Vietnamese friend shared an encouraging story. "My uncle found his sister through a nonprofit organization in Vietnam," he said. "They help families separated by the war. Maybe they can help you too." John felt a spark of hope. "Could you help me contact them?" he asked eagerly. "Of course," his friend replied. "I'll introduce you to the right people." John contacted the organization, providing them with all the details he had. They promised to help, but warned him it might take time. Months passed with no news, yet John remained determined. Chapter 3. After years of waiting, John received a call from the organization one afternoon. The voice on the other end was warm yet urgent. "Hi, John, we believe we have found your mother." Overwhelmed, John felt both sorrow for her suffering and deep gratitude. His adoptive parents and wife encouraged him to go to her immediately. Without hesitation, John booked a flight to Vietnam, believing this journey would bring peace to both of them. Chapter 4. When John arrived in Vietnam, the organization's staff took him to his birth mother's modest home in the Mekong Delta. As he approached, he saw a frail woman standing in the doorway, her hands trembling. Despite the years apart, something about her face felt familiar. Min? She called softly, using the Vietnamese name he had long forgotten. Hearing that name stirred something deep within him. His mother reached out, tears streaming down her face. Min, my son, she whispered, her voice trembling. Without hesitation, John stepped into her embrace and they held each other tightly. Years of separation seemed to melt away. They spent the day sharing memories through an interpreter. Although John no longer spoke Vietnamese, he felt a bond that transcended words. As they talked, John learned about her life and sacrifices. Every day, she said, voice breaking, I prayed I would see you again. Chapter 5. After a week with his birth mother, John returned to America with a newfound sense of peace. He felt complete, knowing his birth mother's love had always been with him, even from across the ocean. Determined to maintain their bond, he began learning Vietnamese to communicate with her directly. With the support of his wife and adoptive parents, John worked to bring his birth mother to America. After months of paperwork, she finally arrived, joining the family he had built. That first night, John sat with both mothers, feeling grateful. I am so thankful, he said, emotion filling his voice. I have two amazing mothers, and I am whole because of both of you. His birth mother turned to his adoptive mother, saying, Thank you for loving him when I could not. You are my family, too. John felt a deep sense of peace. His story had transformed into one of unity and resilience, a journey through loss, love, and ultimate reunion. Chapter 6. As John adjusted to having both mothers in his life, he realized there was much more to explore in their relationship. His birth mother had stories of struggle and hope, and one afternoon on the porch he asked her about her life in Vietnam. What was it like raising me? He inquired. She smiled wistfully. It was both beautiful and difficult, she replied. After the war, everything changed. I tried to find joy in little things like sunsets over the rice fields. John felt a deep connection to the land of his birth. Did you ever think of leaving? He asked, curious. She nodded, sighing heavily. Every day. But I couldn't abandon the hope that things would get better, and I always dreamed of finding you again. Grateful for her words, John said. I'm so glad we found each other. Your love means everything to me. As weeks passed, John included his birth mother in family activities, inviting her to local festivals where she experienced American culture. They spent evenings cooking together, blending Vietnamese flavors with American recipes. One Saturday, they hosted a family gathering to celebrate the merging of both worlds. John invited friends and relatives to share this new chapter of his life. As the day approached, he and his wives prepared a feast, his birth mother teaching them how to make pho while his adoptive mother contributed a classic barbecue. When guests arrived, John felt nervous but excited to share the love and connection blossoming between their families. He proudly introduced them, saying, "This is my birth mother who taught me resilience and love. And this is my adoptive mother who showed me kindness and nurturing." The evening unfolded beautifully with laughter, stories, and the aroma of delicious food. As the sun set, John reflected on the journey that brought everyone together. Chapter 7. Months went by, and John grew more determined to honor both aspects of his identity. He started a community group focused on sharing cultural experiences among Vietnamese and American families. "It's important to share our stories," he said during one meeting. "Our unique experiences can bring us closer together." His enthusiasm inspired others, and the group quickly grew, organizing events for families to cook and share recipes. John's birth mother often captivated audiences with traditional Vietnamese tales. One evening, she shared a childhood festival story, her eyes shining with nostalgia. "We would celebrate the harvest with joy," she reminisced, enchanting everyone around her. John felt pride for both heritages, looking at the mixed audience united in appreciation. As the years passed, his family continued to grow, often traveling to Vietnam, allowing his children to experience their roots. One summer, visiting his birth mother's village, John's daughter, Lily, spotted an old tree by the river. "Daddy, can we climb it?" she exclaimed. John smiled, recalling his mother's childhood tales. "Of course, but be careful." As they climbed, John felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Watching his children embrace their heritage filled him with joy. The journey that had once felt uncertain transformed into one of love and connection, bridging the gap between his two worlds. Years later, John reflected on how far he had come. On the porch, he watched his children play, laughter ringing through the air. His birth mother and adoptive mother sat beside him, sharing stories and laughter, creating a beautiful tapestry of love that celebrated their intertwined lives. His mother smiled, knowing that together they had built a legacy of resilience, love, and unity. The journey from loss to discovery was a testament to the strength of family, one that would inspire future generations.